Yeah, all right. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Family Services Committee. I'm Wala Idris, Councillor Wala Idris, Chair of the committee, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. The event is being streamed live on YouTube, and members of the public and the media are welcome to watch the meeting remotely and listen to the discussions taking place. Now I would like to welcome all those in the committee room 1 at the Kensington Town Hall and everyone watching on YouTube. Before we proceed with the meeting, I would like to ask members of the committee to please make sure our mobile devices are turned off or on silent. And also I would like for us to start the meeting with the appropriate 72 seconds silence to remember those who lost their lives.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. So far, we have received from Mrs. Amanda Sayers and Mr. Richard Drake, yeah, and Derek, and also Councillor Muna Adam is not going to be joining us tonight. Have we received any other absence? Thank you. Does any member have any interest to declare? No? The minutes for the previous meeting have been circulated. Does the committee agree to sign them as a correct record? No. No? Okay. Okay, now to our first our agenda item, and that is item 3, which is at the last meeting of this committee, recognizing that libraries had been added to the remit of the Family Services Directorate. Members decided to add an item focusing on the services offered and utilized by residents in the borough. So before reviewing the report, I would like to say a few words as members of the committee, including myself, visited some of our libraries in preparation for this item. We wanted to see for ourselves the services offered and also see how the community uses the services and information and the library space. Members of the committee were impressed with the offers that we met and would like to thank the staff for welcoming us. Absolutely, I mean, we were really looked after very, very well. I would like to also welcome the lead member, Councillor Josh Rendell, to make a brief introduction to the report. So you would like, yeah, I've always wanted to say it.
Thank you, Chair. Just as an overview, the community knows, but I'll introduce myself for the minutes. I'm Josh Rundle and I'm the lead member for local economy and employment. Libraries does fall under this portfolio. and will continue to do so politically as well. But I'd like to obviously just introduce the report. Libraries are an integral part of our community, and especially in Kensington and Chelsea. As you know, as you've seen, they're extremely well utilised by all members of the community, all different ages, and they're an integral part of what we offer as a frontline service in the borough. They've also been some of our warm hubs over the past winter, also offer a range of services, and not just the usual stuff of books, but things like workplaces, cultural activities, obviously they have the archive service as well, but also a place that the community can meet to learn about different things and experience the library services as well. So we've got 6 libraries in the borough, very well placed across RPKC from north to south, and I think they're a really excellent service. And I want to thank Erin and her team for everything that she's done over the past few years. Under her leadership, that libraries have kind of gone above and beyond what we can expect.
Thank you, Josh. Would you like to ask anything?
I think it's a very good introduction from Josh. The libraries are extremely well utilised by our community, and I'm very proud of them. And as Josh said, really good spread from north to south, which means that every part of the community in Kensington and Chelsea is very well served by their libraries as well. And we do have this huge range of services as well that every demographic in the community is served by. So very good introduction, Josh.
Sarah, anything to add?
The only thing I would add is, I'm Sarah Newman, I'm the Executive Director of Children's Services. It is just the support that our libraries have been able to provide for refugee families, and I think that's been really important, from the Afghan evacuees to the Ukrainians, and also to those families who are living in our contingency hotels.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor for questions from councillors. Mo?
Thank you. Could you tell us a bit about the e-books? Do we have how many e-books do we have? What's the procedure of lending them?
Yes, so we have thousands of e-books, e-magazines, e-journals. It's a really excellent offer. It's available to anybody that joins the library via an application called Libby, which is a really easy to use system that you just access with your library card. Very, very surprising range of e-books and e-journals, things like The Economist you can get for absolutely free, and loads of other kind of books and audio books and journals as well. So all you need to do is come and join the library. If you download the app, you just pop in your membership card.
Yes.
As I say, it's called Libby.
I am, from my perspective, speaking as a resident rather than a councillor, I do use the Libby app, and it's absolutely amazing because what we offer is a library service, of which, to be honest, I didn't realise until I took this portfolio. So you can get basically every newspaper for free on your phone every morning, every magazine, all the magazines you see in shops, for the most part, not every single one, but most of them, you can have downloaded to your phone. I was looking at the BBC Good Food Guide this morning, for example. Things like that that you have as residents here in this borough for no extra cost to you.
There's just The Economist as well.
Yeah, the Economist, all that comes off the Telegraph, Guardian, anything that you want for any range of political views, or indeed just normal magazines or e-books, like you were saying as well. So it's a really great device.
Libby.
You
That's
said
short for libraries.
phone, surely any device, no?
Well, any device.
Any
Sorry,
device.
yes. I just haven't used the phone because I use it on the tube when I go to work
Well,
and
right.
meetings, for example.
Oh, so you download, it's not just internet connection, you can actually get onto
You
your...
can download the whole newspaper, and not just that, anywhere from around the world. So you can get,
Yes.
Wow.
you can read different newspapers from everywhere.
What does the subscription cost?
Free.
No, for us, yes, but I mean, it's not free, it's paid for.
No, it's not. It's surprising. It's surprisingly good value, though. I'd need to look up the exact cost, but we do have agreements as library providers. It's not that we don't pay a commercial rate for that. So, you know, it's thousands rather than
Yeah, I'm
millions,
just wondering
to
what
give
the
you an
monthly
idea.
annually cost is, because it sounds like a fantastic service.
It is absolutely, and very much negotiated by the library sector in order to get those really good value deals for members of public libraries.
I think it's a service we should shout about.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody, sorry, I think a lot of people don't know about it.
I didn't know, and I'm glad
I didn't know. We visited and we didn't know.
We did know.
We visited and we didn't hear about it. So this is fantastic.
We have to do something
Yes.
separate out of this meeting, but we have to do something to promote the
That's right,
service.
Is this, sorry, maybe it's should have joined the library.
Yes, so it's 5 hours service. The library service is 5 hours service. Yeah.
Dory, did you have, did you have a question?
Yeah, I've got some queries about the report. It's an excellent report, of course, very informative. Thank you. I just have 2 questions about it at this stage. One is, what's footfall? Exactly, how is it defined? And what was my second question? I can't find it.
Digital service breakdown?
Pardon?
Digital service.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. It's on here, but I can't find it. My own notes. That's because they'd be read in. I can't put colours in. Anyway, yes, there's a sort of a summation of services, but it's not broken down by library, because I think that'd be really useful. I'm just looking for the thing, because I'm not sure that Notting Gate Library is as busy as it could be. It's been threatened with closure anyway in the past, even before I was elected. And we're looking at ways of upping usage. And so having those figures broken down by library would be useful. Not the ones on the table saying footfall, the definition of footfall, but there's some figures in here somewhere which I'll find in a minute. He said hopefully. Is fine. We're thinking of finding community uses for it, because in the library there is of course a room when you come in, turn right. There's another large room. It's probably about 35 to 40% of the total area, I would guess, bookshelves and everything. But the entrance is not huge, so you could stick a door in there and let it out to people, either for community use or
Sorry, which library are you talking about?
Nottingham Gate
Notting
Library,
Hill Gate.
because I'm guessing it's the least used.
So I can start on some of those questions. I'll get Sarah and Aaron to
We can discuss it later. I'd like to put the
So
suggestion on the
just
table.
for your benefit, Rory, in 3.2 we do have footfall listed, but that's not.
Sorry, say again?
3.2 footfall is listed per library per map.
Yeah, but it doesn't define what
I
footfall
think these are
is.
the questions how do you define.
What is?
Yeah, yeah.
If I walk into the library, walk out again,
Yeah, so it's defined by a unique visit, and it is just physical visits. So weekends are visits to our virtual services, obviously separately. So footfall is literally every unique visit to the library.
so there's a camera counting me in.
It's not a camera. It's part of the security system as you go in and out. It counts people coming in. We do.
I think that's worth putting in there.
Yeah.
It's quite important to know that.
Okay.
How it's defined.
Mm,
You count by some sort of device that recognises the bodies moving inwards.
We do that on
we
high
do.
streets as well. So I know that's separate to this, but that's how it works on a high street as well.
What do you mean? Are there counting points along the pavement?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. But anyway, that's not out
No,
from
no.
this committee, but that's an example that I know.
Yeah, understood. I mean, this is new. I'm sure this is new to all of us, or at least committee members. So maybe we could, somewhere in the future, when we write that in, just define it somewhere, what is footfall? It's counted by people walking in. Thanks very much.
We do also have some further measures in order to assess depth of usage as well as that breadth of usage. So some of the statistics that we're legally obliged to send off, we do things like we actually count how long some people are staying in samples. We don't do that all the time because of how much time that would take, but we do that, and obviously we look at active members as well. So we get a really good sense from all of those things, whether people are just walking in and out. So obviously that's not useful on its own, but
Exactly.
really useful when you look at it within the range.
How do you measure somebody, unless you ask them or look at them, how do you know how long is spent by somebody in the library? I mean, you sample it, you say, that means you talk to someone.
It'll be observation during the sample period.
Physical.
Hmm.
Okay, because I mean, I might walk in and talk to the librarian about something for a couple of minutes and walk out again. But that counts as footfall, obviously, from what you said. Okay,
Indeed.
thanks. In a minute, I'll find the figures after.
Actually, if I may just quickly check,
Yeah.
elaborate on that point, because for the baby classes,
Mm.
the rhyme classes, which are so popular,
Mm.
you know, and they're fantastic. I was one of the regular customers myself, and they're, you know, so they're brilliant. So, you know, sometimes you have a nanny, the mother, and so I mean that would, you know, count as two people. You know, so.
Thank you. Sonia?
Can I?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, what can you tell us about the usage of the library, not in terms of members, but do you have data that breaks down by demographic? So age, social background, ethnicity, areas in the borough, and based on that, are you able to identify where there might be any gaps or any sort of specific areas that we should be targeting people a bit more and letting them know more about the services that are on offer?
Yeah, sure. So we do collect that information in terms of membership. It's obviously impossible to collect in terms of just footfall because because we're not monitoring those sorts of statistics for people that come in. But in terms of membership, when we ask people to sign up, there's all the usual kind of demographic information collected. And we use that to compare that to census data to see whether the area is actually reflecting the community of that area as well. And there's absolutely more that we can be doing.
Would you say in general that library membership, so I know it sounds so niche in a way, but the sort of usage of the library, I suppose if you combine the membership with the classes that are on offer in the schools that might come in, do you say that in general would reflect the area for all of these libraries?
Absolutely, yes. We do tend to find that each library really does track to the demographics of that area. So for certain areas we will have people of different ages, for instance, being the most prevalent users, and we find that tracks with whatever that community is made up of. I think we're really lucky in that respect as a service to be so diverse in terms of the people that use us, really do reflect the community in every way.
I think as well, just from that personal observation as well, Sonia, is that the libraries, for example, school students will use libraries, so they're not necessarily a member of the library, because they'll be a member of their school library, but they utilise the service, especially Kensington Social Library. We've got obviously some schools around here, North Kensington Library, got some secondary schools up there as well. At GCSE time or A-level time, those libraries are extremely well utilised by our students in RBKC, although not necessarily they may not be a member of the library. So, but there's a kind of diverse range of backgrounds that do kind of use the libraries, as I said, different points of the year, different types of people. For example, Brompton Library, not near any schools particularly, but very popular with mothers and young families. So it just depends kind of where we are located, the library is located, that kind of gets different points.
Yeah, so can I ask just a very specific question, just in relation to my award, of course?
Yes.
But, so Chelsea Riverside, would you get lots of people from, I suppose, the areas that are further away from Chelsea libraries, so for example, Wells End, Lots Road area?
So I think that's a really good question. Obviously, there's only one library in Chelsea.
Yes, all the way.
It's in the centre of Chelsea, so it's the 4 wards of Chelsea for the most part. I can't say with certainty people are coming from Chelsea Academy or Lots Road or World's End Estate to specifically Chelsea Library, although considering the footfall numbers, and I'm conscious to talk about that, is the second ranked library in the borough, so it's one of the most well utilised. And it is reflected around those particular things, but I'm not sure. I mean, we can probably get a breakdown of memberships, whether they're really postcode wise, whether they utilise the library or not, but in terms of the specifics, I can't answer that question right now.
That's right, thank you.
And sorry. On the other again, on the footfall, the other thing that just occurred to me is when we rent out spaces, for desking, commercial use, that goes under the same footfall, right?
No, actually, because in most instances, they probably are going to Chelsea Library, but both in Notting Hill Gate and in Brompton Library, they tend to use a separate entrance.
Okay, so it's the Blackpool Library. Okay.
Thank you.
And those are the two biggest ones, actually, Brompton and Notting Hill Gate. Chelsea's quite a small service, so most of those people aren't going to come.
Right, but in the Kensington one, I'm assuming they use the same entrance. Separate entrance.
We don't have one at Kensington Central.
Okay.
We don't have this, we don't have hot desking or?
No, just the study spaces, not spaces.
So we have space in Brompton Live, as Erin said,
Yeah,
which you get where people rent out
Well,
space for a specific work purpose. We have architects,
yeah.
accountants,
Yes,
who basically use the library,
Daily.
part of the library as their workspace,
Yeah.
of which the council does receive
And then-
income for. Obviously that can be re-put into the library service or other services, to do that as well. But like Erin said, there's a separate entrance at Brompton for that.
You talk about the basement on the library, you're not talking about the people who come to use
That's correct.
computers.
That's
People
right,
are using,
exactly.
and they have to go down, or to go
We
down.
don't have to, but
They
they
take,
could. They could never be,
because, yeah, the other thing I want to ask in this context is if I walk in the library twice in a day, I'm counted twice. Okay. So I can just walk in and out and get the numbers up.
if you want to spend your day doing that, then
Am I going to make it look better?
Oh, Stella, I distinctly remember we had some mobile libraries before. And I was looking, are they still available now for the schools? Especially for parents who do not have time to go to the library with the children. Are they still being used?
We have a home library service.
The mobile libraries, yeah.
Well, yes, it's a home library
Library,
service, so it's not the old fashioned kind of van
Yes,
that
yeah.
parks up.
Yes.
It's a membership service where if people can't come to the library, they can join up. We have two wonderful members of staff, Anita and Attila, who run the home library service. There's several hundred members of the home library service across Kensington and Chelsea. Many of them are residents unable to leave their homes for various reasons, and they really highly value the service provided by the borough in order to ensure that they can still have that contact. So it's a wonderful service.
Because they are really very useful for these children. They really look forward when this mobile library comes to the school, and even the PTA members love being discussions with whoever is coming about the books.
For schools specifically, we have some lovely outreach services. So we do class visits where librarians visit with books and tell stories and things like that.
Just a couple of quick points and then a question. First one is under 3.3, you list a number of health and wellbeing facilities made available. Do you have a defibrillator in libraries? Because it's now become almost ubiquitous in schools with the initiative of the, I can't remember what that's named, but it's a particular name on the campaign. I was wondering
You
whether-
speak up a bit.
Sorry, do they have defibrillators in your library?
We do. I
Right.
can't hand on heart say there's one in every one, but it's such a good point. I will check
Yeah.
immediately to make sure. I've personally witnessed someone's life being saved with one,
Right.
so I know that we do have them, but I'm definitely going to check that we have one in every one.
And under page 14 under holiday activity and food programme, talk about making the children targeted to those as preschool meals. Do you also target special educational needs children?
I don't think that how program works, but I don't know if Sarah wants to come.
Yes, so the HAF programme is a government initiative that's absolutely targeted to those children in receipt of free school meals. There's other provision for children who've got special educational needs.
Yeah, and you would provide that through the library.
So there's a whole range
A
of
whole
support through the libraries and schools
Yeah.
and family hubs and youth clubs for children with special educational needs.
Under 3.5, you mentioned one of the things department is the Royal Prepare for Trust. Just technicality, I don't think that actually exists anymore. It's part of the guidance and policies. It may well be that the hospital is still tied to that. And looking at supporting that area. But just effectively, the substantive question though is this, looking ahead on the 3.7, with some excellent ideas coming forward there. Definitely, how would you take forward consultation with the communities, with the library serve with regard to future plans? So what sort of means do you use to consult with local communities?
We use a lot of means to consult with the community. Obviously, people coming into the library service as well. We do consult with them for various things. And for example, North Kensington Library is very active, and Fiona and the team up there does a very good job in outreaching to the community on what they would like from their library or the other services that libraries could provide. As you know, looking at the transformational program, we're only exploring now, looking at libraries to supply other council services, not just library services, but things like housing, public health, adult social care, where people can utilise the library as a bit of a mini town hall right throughout the borough, so people can go and access those. Of course, that is not policy, that is not necessarily in place yet, it's just a suggestion that the leadership team and officers are exploring, ambition, to utilise how services better be accessible to people and residents much better. In terms of consultation, I think that is definitely something that, if that can pass, I will look into, and how we go about doing that properly. I know some people at the moment have a bit of consultation fatigue, let's say, for various reasons. But if and when we get to that point, we'll look at the ways about we will.
We can deliberately focus, as mentioned earlier on the local demographic community around individuals. So it might be a slightly different process.
Absolutely, and that's very much the approach that we take. It's really engaging over the issue that community is interested in, and I think, as Josh says, that does help get over that consultation fatigue because we engage on the issues that community is particularly interested in.
Thank you very much.
I found my question. You look, it's more, again, it's about presentation of information, make it, I mean, it's already very interesting information, but to make it more useful is to understand what's going on in our libraries. It's on page 13, I think it's 3.3, digital services. The second to last bullet point says access to so many PCs, so many tablets and printers. It would be helpful if that was done by a library. Again, is to find out actually how much use that particular library is. Of course, I have a particular interest in the one in my ward, but I think it'd be useful for everybody. And then if you go further down, you have again total information. 3.4, support for literacy, children's literacy and learning. Again, it just gives the total. What I also say is define the period. It doesn't matter what the period is, just define the period so we know in future, so we can compare year on year, or even quarter on quarter. I mean, it depends what people want to do, but at least year on year, we can see how things are going. At the moment, I mean, maybe you have the data, but it's just.
I think on the basis of just how the paper is, looking at the overall.
Yeah, I understand.
We can get back to you in writing on that, for example,
Yeah,
or to the committee. For
Sure.
example.
What I also find interesting, also the clearer your definition, because you go back to 3.3, information and learning, you mentioned 25,000 and some attendees across the two boroughs, but then you give statistics and it doesn't say whether it's one borough or two boroughs, or both boroughs, support for children's literacy and learning. So it's, and then 120,800 items lent to children. Is that one borough or two boroughs? See, and again, that's also, it'd be useful to have it divided down. I'm not suggesting it should be done here. So I think this is a very useful report that I see for the first time. So I'm just suggesting make it in the future perhaps more useful, even more useful than it is at the moment. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, Jen.
Like all my colleagues, I mean, it is a fantastic report and really very impressed. Because North Kent, Central and Brompton, and we were very, very impressed. And the people who run very enthusiastic, everything. What do you see in the long term, besides all this, there's a future vision for libraries in attracting more young adults. I mean, of course, the nursery rhyme, all that is very popular. Hot desking, commercial side of it, I think that's a good way of funding it, which, I mean, I don't know if North Kensington does it. I hadn't appreciated that Kensington Central doesn't do it. It didn't cross my mind, but it was very, so overall, how can we engage the young adults more? Because obviously, everybody's reading on their phones, not one books, often they come during exams. Any other ideas? Of how we can engage them further?
I'll actually add on to that because I had a similar question I was going to ask. You mentioned outreach to schools. Do you also do outreach to youth centres as well? Youth clubs and centres in the past, where I suppose young adults are more likely to.
So Joe, I'll take that first of all, and then Sarah and Eric will come in to fill on some of the more operational details. So pretty, yeah, absolutely. Libraries offer a different service if you're thinking not just solely about going in and renting a book or returning a week later. So it has adapted with the times, and I think Eric and the team have done a really, really good job at doing that. And our knowledge of how young people are using it, young adults, mostly for study, but also for research, but also going in a space where they can go to after school that's not necessarily their home or not necessarily somewhere where they're going to be necessarily distracted as well. So in terms of that, it's very, very well utilised in that respect. In terms of how we can utilise that better, I mean, we're always looking for suggestions and ideas, which obviously the report asks the committee to do, to look at what we can do better, for example, in the library services. And obviously, the more people use them, the better they are, because as I said, they're a frontline service at the front door to the council. When people think of a council service, they will often think one of the top three things, libraries. So compared to everything else that we do. So I mean, that's something that we really want to kind of challenge and try. And Sonia, sorry, what was your question?
Just about whether you engage with youth clubs.
Yep, so we engage with not just youth clubs, not just schools, as you can see here, the schools are very well utilised. But we also look at adult learning as well, which is why, in part, the libraries fall under this portfolio for adult learning, adult education, further skills. Because what we want to encourage, especially with some of our partners, for example, Morley College, North Kensington, or Morley College in Chelsea, to have adult literacy or better adult learning experiences. And so our library services work with them as well, in addition to places like Elscourt Youth Club or Harrow Club or whoever else may be utilised as well, in order to do that. So it's varied across the board basically, but obviously there could be more to do. But it's I think we are aware of the areas that and the challenges and opportunities that are available to us.
Okay, and in terms of engaging in your question about how we can engage young adults a bit more, are most of your programs targeting primary school children, or are there any programs targeted at young adults as well? Teenagers?
I think so. Well, teenagers certainly yes, but I would say for the team here, and I'm going to flag is I'm biased. I think the library's great at this. Is the cultural aspect and the events aspect that we have, and I think because of that, our libraries are probably best utilised and best mailing list, I think, in the whole RBKC for that type of element. And so we do try to have different opportunities for young people, older people, to come to utilise the libraries. And there could be authors, there could be speakers, there could be artists, whatever else that comes about. I don't know if anyone wants to build in more about that information, but that's something that we do target and very aware of in that respect.
Yes, I think that makes sense about events. I'm just thinking that I know when the recent Little Women film came out, lots of people I know decided that they would read the book for the first time. And there's a new Harry Potter series coming out soon, not sure when. And we have a new generation of young people that can become Harry Potter readers. So I suppose like events that tie
into that. Okay,
tie popular culture into reading could be something that attracts young adults.
Very fair point, you've nailed
Just an idea, not a question.
Thank
you.
Good.
Just one, the one thing that I have, just an observation, that I noticed that libraries are used by private tutors to, for tutoring.
Yes.
I just noticed.
Yes.
That's also, and final point, sorry, I'll shut up soon. And we all get library cards, which is great, Public Tower, and it's wonderful, you can use it. Do we have any plans to digitalize those cards? Like how it is now?
Yeah. That's how the young kids do. They just do
It's
the.
your Apple Wallet, for example.
Yes, exactly.
Don't use
Apple Wallet, yeah. Well,
Yeah, but anyway.
There is a
Telegram,
have
sorry,
any-
with Signal Telegram, you can have yours on.
There's a Google, not Telegram, it's so insecure. So actually, there's a Google wallet. I've tried that.
yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
Judy,
do we have any plans?
yeah, a regular app or something.
Well, we do have a library app and the details will be stored in there.
And you can have a card in there, can you?
And you can use it as a card to
So
swipe.
how do we find the app?
No, you can't do that at this time, but that is something that I think IT are looking into. I think the what is more likely these days and what most councils are looking to do is try and get more of an integrated card that can be used across a number of services in the borough. So I don't think we'd want to do something in isolation. We'd want to work with the rest of the councils to do something with
Oh, no, that's what I
a
meant,
really
yeah,
great
across
service
the borough,
already. Yeah, so we'll work with IT to support that.
And that's in the pipeline.
I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Actually, do you have access to the Westminster libraries as are you?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So
Yeah.
it's real integrated by borough service.
It works really well for residents. So not only do all of Kensington Chelsea residents get access to the physical libraries, they can also order books from Westminster Libraries to collect in Westminster Casey libraries, and also all of our virtual events as well. We've got an excellent online events programme, and any Westminster event is also available to Kensington Chelsea.
I'm thinking, where I am, of course, I've got Nottingham Gate, but we have a bigger, perhaps more impressive library called Portchester Library,
Mhm.
not far away
Yes.
from that part of the borough. So, it's good to know that we
Yes, there's an excellent range of community events at Portchester as well. That,
I see posters up.
One of the things that we noticed is in the Broughton Library is very enchanting and it's just amazing. And it's very well used, very, very energetic and very exciting. The Central Library, I was just taken aback by how many young people are in the library doing studies and doing research, which is fantastic to see. North Kensington Library had a lot of amazing number of kids. It was really, it's like going into a big playground. But upstairs, we felt it was a little, it wasn't as much as utilized as it should have been. We don't know whether that's because of the time we went to visit, because we visited in the morning, could have been more utilized in the afternoon. But I'm curious to know that how are they managed? You said they give different offer because they sit in different communities and they cater to different demographics and age and race and whatnot. But I was wondering, are they managed along the same way, or are they managed in a similar sense? So it just felt like there was something missing. And we just kind of like want to make sure that with the community, it is utilized the utmost.
So North Kensington Library, very much a lot of library, is utilised extremely well. North Kensington Library has the benefit of a very active Friends of North Kensington Library, made up from a range of residents across North Kensington who initially went out to save the library from council policy at the time, and now it's a much loved aspect of the community. So we've got the children's library downstairs, which I don't know if you did go to.
Yeah, that's where we see it.
We've got the main library, and then there's the upstairs of the library as well. I would say, though, that the council or the leadership team, its meeting about a month ago, just made about £1 million available for the North Kensington Library for an archive. So the initial views of residents, and again, this is very much in their hands, not for the council to tell them how it should be or where it should go, is to have a discovery phase of an archive in North Kensington. And maybe in that part of the library, it may not be. But for example, the council is putting money towards that and working in conjunction with the National Archives to achieve the aims of those residents who want an archive for reflecting social justice movements in North Kensington, but also in part to reflect the Grenfell tragedy as well. So the thing with an archive is that it's very balanced. It's not one political side or another. It's a collection of materials from let's say the 1860s, when North Kensington started to become more of a residential hub, up until the present day, for example. So that's why in that part of North Kensington Library, you may have witnessed is different to the others, but that is again because the library is very unique.
So
in
it's
the
in the
circumstance.
works.
It's in the works.
That's why
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
why the space looks unutilized, because it's in the works.
I wouldn't say it's because of that reason. I think the space is actually very well utilised. I mean, when we host a meeting there as myself and Erin's team as well for the Friends of North Kensington Library, for the North Kensington Community Group, which is a wider group of residents that come to look at library policies, how the library is working for them, and that's very well attended to. But there were various reasons why that. And the issue, the other uniqueness, I would say, about North Kensington Library, the council has a MOU with the Friends of North Kensington Library. So anything that happens to the library, we must consult with them first, and that is written on a page, obviously. But we're looking to review that and considering we've now passed the 5th anniversary of Grenfell. We have a new chief executive in place at the council. We have got new political leadership as well, and just in terms of looking at that particular thing as well. So North Kensington Library, as I said, very much loved community. Obviously, I support it personally, and in terms of the team here, do the best that we can for it. And I think it's going to go bigger and better things for that.
So just a second.
Oh, sorry.
My next question is, how is success measured? And where is it reported?
Good question. Success measured, obviously, because we're using our libraries. I'm very pleased that every single one of our libraries is, as I said, well utilised. That's the main thing. There's no suggestion at all of reviewing libraries or the services that they provide. I think that's a really positive step. Really positive that the council does maintain them, invests in them, puts money towards them, unlike some other boroughs perhaps in the UK. So that's one thing. So it's a success to have them well utilised. In terms of your other point, that's for your committee to do that conversation, just to ensure that we're all on the case and we report back with issues that you want to say as well.
Thank you.
If I could,
Yes,
on this particular point, one of the metrics that I had looked at as a paper was to look at the usage per square metre. And North End Library is the highest by a long way. It's 50% higher than Central Library, and many times several other things. It's over double the Chelsea Library in terms of the use. Some of the stats are not available in the other libraries, but it's quite interesting. So I think it possibly is, as you mentioned, Chair, in your introduction on this particular point, that you visited at a certain time of the day, and that it may well be that it's utilised, particularly that part of the library may be utilised at other times of the day. But certainly out of the paper itself, the evidence is that it's highly utilised.
Well said.
Chair, just one more to follow on.
Yes, sorry, absolutely. Yeah, come on.
Said. I think we're wondering also whether there's any way of perhaps increasing the use of the meeting rooms there, maybe for community use and the commercial use, because of income. Now, again, I suppose it could be because of the day the time and the day we walked in, only a snapshot. But we're just wondering, because there's quite a nice meeting room there, and whether that could be better, more used, or maybe it's already heavily used, but you just didn't see it because we're there.
So
Anyway,
for my, yeah,
Well, according to the manager we spoke with,
yeah,
they're not that much used. And I was thinking maybe because looking at the community, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there are a lot of small businesses startup business. Hub desking some of the area will be very beneficial for the community to actually, if they can't work from home or they just don't want to work from home that day, there is a desk they can go and utilize for a nominal fee. And that could go back into the library.
There are other library services, other libraries I would suggest perhaps that people utilise. I do understand your point, Chair. As I referred to earlier, with the MAU that this council has with the residents of North Kensington, it's not in our gift or our policy mindset to do that.
I see.
Given the political context,
I
because
see.
we support North Kensington Library as it is. We support the Friends of North Kensington, their vision. They've put a vision forward for an archive, which this leadership team has supported and has now passed, as I said. The community use, from my perspective, I think is really well utilised. But we have to be aware of the context.
No, I just think this, any of these ideas would of course be passed by friends of the North Kensington Library. Just wondering if you can just get perhaps already, I mean, where would the archive would be a physical archive?
Yes.
Placed where it needs to be placed in
But
that.
again, it's not for us, it's not for me as a member, it's not for us.
Okay.
It's going to
Okay,
be
Doris,
through
okay.
community consultation to see what that is.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, yeah.
Very brief, moody aesthetics. In libraries, just to make them a bit more attractive, essentially, what about putting posters with some history of Kensington? Like if you go to, sorry, this is not an analogy, but if you go to Ivy Kensington, you look around and you say, oh, the 1851 exhibition.
Yeah.
So what about just putting some posters up? They do it in museums. I just want.
You can do that.
Yeah.
I'll go into Central Library soon and have your picture right there. The history of the library, the Camden Ward councillors, that's who did this. No, but it's a really good point. I mean, we do have.
The children, if they're standing around, they read.
We do have different historical elements per library. Like we did one last month for LGBT History Month in February. We're doing one for the coronation, for example.
Yeah.
So the history of RBKC, and especially when a monarch is coronated, we do have those elements around different libraries in RBKC. But in terms of permanent fixtures, I think very good point. I mean, our archives in Kensington and Chelsea are excellent.
Yes.
What would the information that they have compared to perhaps some others around the country is probably second to none. We have historians, researchers, everyone who come to utilize our archive because they're probably up there with the best on them. So no, that's a very good point in terms of looking at the history of not just RBKC, but then maybe the library itself.
So actually, Chelsea Westminster, you go in the basement. Anyway, that's such enough.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we covered just about everything. Thank you, and I see we have fantastic offer of libraries, and we like the vision. Talks about what you are hoping to achieve going forward. They're going to be a real hub for the community where everybody who wants anything, want to find out about anything, can go to the library. That is news, great news to hear. And then you walked us through the process and how you see the vision developing. And so I think we asked all the questions we can ask, and thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Mary,
Sorry, Mary, did you have
Spread the
any-
word.
Actually, you will have more people come to your library.
Absolutely, that's what we want to hear.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you.
So,
That's really good. Still coming.
all right. At our last meeting, hi Patrick. Hello. At our last meeting, the committee discussed service provision for children under 5. And following this, we discussed, when discussing the work program, the committee agreed to add an item on service provision for ages 0 to 11 to the agenda as a scene acting report to inform the committee's work into the new municipal year. This report provides information on the numbers of children and young people we work with and set out costs associated with each. I would like now to welcome the lead member, Councillor Catherine Forbes, to briefly introduce the report.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting us and for setting us this task to report back to you. So this report is on for children aged 0 to 18, not just the sort of under 11.
So, no, okay, 18, okay.
Yeah, up to 0 to 18. And in response to what you asked us to do, it maps out the different categories that there are supporting our children. So there's the statutory intervention, the targeted intervention, and the universal support. I think I could talk about it, but the paper is incredibly clear. It maps out the numbers under each area. As you will notice, under the statutory intervention, it's very hard to actually put a sort of financial figure against that because it's going to sort of change. I think it's all there really. I want to thank Sarah and her team for making it so clear and in one place, which is always helpful to have that. So I think the best thing would be if you would like to fire away and ask us some questions.
All right.
Well, what more you'd like to find out that you don't see in this
Exactly.
paper.
No?
Thank you. It's good to see you, Catherine. I have dealt with 4 cases in the past year where children been expelled from school and they were sent to alternative provisions, namely the Goulburn and Latin. And their parents were dying to prevent their children to go there. Because they told me literally, if we allow our children to go there and to associate with the rest of the children, I have to use the term they told me, they will become proper criminals. This is very serious. I have 4 cases and I'm still dealing with them. How could we prevent this? How could we fix this?
So we just introduced our inclusion strategy, which is absolutely about how what we want to do is make children feel included so they don't get excluded from school. And the schools absolutely put everything they can into keeping the children in the school. But there are inevitably some circumstances where that just isn't possible. So they also do short-term exclusions, maybe for 8 weeks. So before they get permanently excluded, they're taken away and they go to the almost a lashes school there, and they get. I went there the other day. Incredible support, literally a one-to-one. They each have an individual curriculum to help them, support them to get back to their learning. They have 55 children there. You'll see. In fact, I think it's only 50 at the moment. And so I think it's a bit inflammatory to suggest that if they go, they'll turn into criminals, because it undermines actually the excellent work that the teachers are doing in that school to really help some quite troubled children. Obviously, I don't know the particular cases that you're talking about, but I think one can't be completely starry-eyed that there aren't some children which is incredibly difficult to keep in mainstream schools that really are struggling. They've got very large classes. They can have children that don't attend school, are very disruptive in classes, and actually you've got another 29 children in that class who need to learn to do things. So there will be occasions, I'm afraid, when they have to be excluded. But I can assure you that it's never done lightly at all, and that when they go there, or when I've been there, I have seen no evidence that I thought they would go out and become criminals. It's children who have had, for various reasons in their lives, some, troubled circumstances. They're vulnerable for all sorts of other reasons. And I'm glad that this council really commits to supporting them to try to get them back into further education or skills training so that they can progress and they aren't just being left with no other hope to move on to anything else. I don't know if you'd like to add.
Well, I think you probably said it all, Catherine. I mean, the only bit to add is that through the inclusion strategy, we have an inclusion project, which is all about targeting those children who are at risk of exclusion and providing support in order to try and prevent it. I think you'll see the numbers of children, as Catherine said, in alternative provision are very small. And I think actually the one correlating factor to our young people who are being supported by the Youth Offending Service is those children who aren't attending at school. And so actually a lot of work goes into the alternative provision to wrap support around those children so that they do keep attending.
Well, the term I use, it's not my assessment. I don't judge anything. I'm just passing what I have heard. The parents told me this.
Well, I think I would like to invite you to come with me, actually.
I would love to.
And I think it would be quite interesting to see, because actually when we talk about excluded children, some of them have learning difficulties as well.
Yes.
So again, it's not just about being disruptive. Like some of them, for example, just can't attend mainstream school because they find it too traumatic for various instances that might have happened in their life. So at Ormiston Latimer, they can cater for children, like they can come in a different entrance, they can go out and have into the playground on their own. So they really are giving one-to-one attention on this particular cohort of children. So we'll arrange for you to, or if the whole committee actually would like to go there, because I think it's, the exclusions is something that gets a very bad rap, it's being very, unfair to children, and that we're being cruel to them. But I think we do have to bear in mind the schools, the teachers, the other pupils in the school, and actually accept that just some children, it is very, very hard to keep them in the mainstream education.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Other questions?
Yes, I want to say thank you for this report. I think it provides a very good base. In our meeting last time, we asked for a paper to start us on the road to having, we needed some foundation knowledge to look next, if the committee wishes an OSC substantiated, next year that we would be addressed the 0 to 11 vision holistic wraparound child team. I think on that front, that a couple of questions. One is, could you, for me, we've been to visit some child centres and family centres, and there was a little confusion in our mind the difference between a child centre and a family centre, which may be useful to enlighten us on. And then to look at to give an idea as to where we might want to go next year, is how to bring, do you have any involvement in, or what is the involvement of voluntary sector partners, primary schools and NHS providers? It's wraparound care on the universal provision. It's really, there's a lot of emphasis, quite rightly, on those children who have particular issues and are having special needs. The reason that we might want to look at universal provision and how that might best practice, and that might be a bit broader, is because that helps best in the reduction of need for services, which is one of the parallels to having targeted services, those who are still in need. So it's balancing that pyramid in paper, making sure that we address the balance way, keep the top of it and the bottom as well, so people don't go up.
There's quite a lot in that question. I mean, there's sort of family hubs. I don't know where you went to visit. We've got family hubs and children's centres.
The home house.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Maxella and
Maxilla Goldborn.
I wasn't able to make that.
So they're all slightly different services
Yeah.
in each of them.
And we've seen different things, which is actually very useful. Very useful.
There seems to be some development. Well,
It's about the family hubs that we're very keen to
maybe
develop.
that's the question is, what's the difference?
I suppose the difference with the family hub is, again, it's a bit like, it's the wraparound service for the holistic service. So if you I always think it's a good idea to have, so if you turn up with the mother and the child, so is the problem actually with the family themselves? It could be to do with housing, it could be to do with their benefit provision. So anything within that sort of family circumstance at that age, in the family hub, they will be signposted to somebody that can help with them. So that's the idea. And there's one in the north, and there's a Cheney Family Hub that we're developing
So
in
the
the south.
Chinese and stuff.
Yeah, in the south. And then the children's centres is more where you can go and get sort of specific help around nursing your child, the health of the child. So that's more health focused. I mean, the other, you will get health advice in the family hub, but it's more inclusive. Am I doing well on this? Sarah might come in and sort of define it a bit more succinctly.
There's a national movement now
Yeah.
for family hubs.
Okay.
The idea is providing all of the services that a family might need
Yeah.
in one
In one
place,
place, yeah.
rather than having to go to lots of different
Because
Yeah.
it makes sense.
And you know, the reality is sometimes we can't do it all in one building,
Mm.
but actually we do it through a network
Network
of
of
services and how they're all working together. And the idea is that a family navigator will link the family hub with
Yeah.
the local schools
Mm.
and the primary health centres, so that actually no matter where someone lands for support, we can make sure that they're connected with every service that they need to meet, as Kathleen said, their holistic needs.
Okay. So even though you have physically different buildings, the service is one service and one person can get that. Because I think that's the biggest thing with government service. It is always, you know, everywhere and you have to jump around from one place to
Yeah.
another.
So
Yeah.
if this is a work in progress, that's why we're keen to look at that,
Yeah.
examine best practice and how it's been promulgated.
Yeah.
As part of our programme, subject to all the governance processes, so this committee will not be reconstituted until after AG.
I mean, your other question, Will, I didn't quite understand. I mean, I don't know if the family hub sort of
Well, I
answered
think
that.
you-
But I think,
Yeah.
I think we are, as I think it says in this paper, we're about to embark on a youth review, which will obviously be more focused on the older children rather than the young one. But actually, I'm sort of quite keen within that youth review, when we see how we spend our money, as to absolutely on the universal services, how we look at the most children, that it is universal, that more
Yeah.
people can access it. Because I am aware with some of our youth centres, maybe only a particularly small cohort maybe might benefit from what we're getting going there. So, for example, you know, is there more that we can do in schools? Are there more outside partners that we can encourage? And I think a lot of it will be to doing, because, you know, we have limited funds ourselves, and, you know, it's great that we still have the funds we have and we are still maintaining all our youth centres and youth services, which is very important to us. But I think there are really interesting things going on. So I'll just give you a quick example of this morning. I had a meeting with Chefs in Schools. So this is a charity who go into schools and support both the chefs in the schools to cook new food, but also come in and help with families and how they can cook better meals, how they can get better quality for their money, and all sorts of those sorts of things. So that's a sort of an idea of a partnership of somebody that we might be able to get to come and work with us in terms of looking at healthy eating, to go alongside, you know, when you're looking at people getting universal school meals, which is sort of great, but in my view they need to be healthy universal school meals,
Yes.
rather than just any school meal. So we want to ensure that we're working with other people to create both a healthy and safe environment for our children. And likewise, I saw St Giles Trust yesterday, who of course are helping, going back to your other point actually, of excluded children, who are working in fact with some of our children who unfortunately found them in the youth justice criminal services, and helping them adjust and getting back into mainstream and jobs and work. So, but they also do a programme, SOS Plus in schools, and that's about talking to children and trying to prevent them entering into the criminal justice system. So I think it's when you look at a paper like this, it was really impossible to really discuss all the amazing other partners that are out there that we have the potential to work with alongside what we as a council can do ourselves.
Maybe you can come back and tell us more of that next week.
Yeah, I think.
Can I just add that? Because I think there's preventative services,
Yes, yes.
there's early help services,
Yes.
and then there's statutory services.
Yeah.
And a lot of our partners are in that preventative space, so
Yeah.
health partners, education partners, and then we step into the early help and statutory parts of that. And that's very much the function of children's services. Public health colleagues, of course, are interested in that whole piece.
Yeah.
The whole idea of a public health approach is that whole population approach.
I have a couple of, any questions? I have a couple of questions. I want to take you back to Lo's earlier question. When you were talking about, you have a preventative from school.
The inclusion strategy.
Inclusion. The strategy, when does it kick in? Where do you see, when do you decide this person is on the verge of exclusion and how do you pick it up?
I'll start and then I'm sure Sarah wants to. So the point about that is a bit like the triangle that you've got on here.
Yeah.
So you've got the stretch along the bottom
Yeah.
where you're looking out for signs
Yeah.
that children might be heading in that direction. And obviously, like with anything in children's services, prevention and early intervention is absolutely the most important and valuable thing that you can do. So there's been sort of working with the teachers and the schools particularly for them to sort of just spot and think, I'm a bit worried about that child. Now, something's going on. Is it with the child? Is it with the family? Is it with the peers that is the child being bullied? There could be all sorts of number of things that could be affecting that child, which you want to pick up absolutely as early as possible. And alongside that, there might be some learning difficulties. Are there speech and communication difficulties? As there undiagnosed special educational needs?
Yeah.
So all those things, the earlier you can pick them up, that's absolutely the best place to be picking them up. And then you've got a sort of another layer where you've escalated a bit further up the scale, where you think, okay, actually we've got to put some sort of intervention services in at this level to prevent them, again, to keep them included in mainstream sort of schools. And then those will be services, again, that we, our social workers will probably be involved at that point. They will be, again, looking at the families, looking at the child in that holistic way. There might be also other partners that we're working with in the community. So just one example of an organisation I'm very keen on is the West London Zone, who, are very good at picking up, if they're signposted to particular children in schools. In fact, they have their own key workers in schools who are looking out, especially for those sort of children. And then they will do one-to-one intervention. So they'll go, do they need some extra reading? Are they just very shy and they're sort of intimidated and they've lost their confidence? So maybe we'll send them off to a circus class. There's all sorts of rather wonderful interventions that they particularly do. And then again, you've got the really sort of top end. And at that point, I guess maybe our sort of youth, our youth teams, our sort of outreach teams will be really sort of trying, the targeted prevention team. That will be if they've got into sort of more serious trouble. So there again is a sort of pyramid of how we're trying to include children as hard as possible to keep them in our school system. Would you like to add to that?
I really wouldn't.
Okay, I thank you for that. And I have one more question on attendance. Has there been a shift in numbers between now, say, post-COVID and pre-COVID? Because I've heard a number of times that not everybody went back to school.
Yeah.
So have you seen a shift and what is being done to actually kind of turn that around?
You're absolutely right. There has been a shift and attendance has dropped. And in fact, Paul, Sarah will tell you, there's now a statutory requirement from the government, they've just imposed on us, that we actually have to record attendance numbers. But we've not only got to record them for our grant-maintained schools, we've also got to record them for all the private schools in the borough, but without any extra funding, unfortunately, to collate those records of attendance for the private schools. So
you could
you're
try
right.
the private schools.
Yeah, so you're right. It is absolutely an issue, and for some quite understandable reasons. If you've been out of school for a long time, some children are just quite scared and intimidated about going back to school. So it's and again, that's putting an extra pressure on the schools. So you go to schools and some of the the teaching assistants are having to actually knock on front doors to try and encourage the children to sort of come back to, attend school with them. So, and again, it's another thing, in fact, with the West London zone to try and encourage. So, you're right to identify that. And I guess when we finally have started getting and monitoring those numbers, we'll be able to report back to actually see, where we're going. Hopefully they will be ticking upwards, which is exactly why they want, government wants us to record that.
That would be really. Thank you so much. Thank you. Any other questions? Somebody?
Thank you for the report. Just one question. When children are excluded from school and are provided with alternative provision, how long does it usually last for? Do we have data on how many of these children go back into normal school afterwards? Can you sort of measure success in that way?
So there's I don't know the actual numbers, Sarah might know them. But so there's the short interventions, those sort of short ones, and I think it's it's like 80% of the children who are on the short-term interventions do go back into mainstream school, which is a really good success rate. I think I'm right in saying that.
Yeah, I think that's right. We've got all of the data.
Yeah.
I mean, once you go past the short term and they come out and go straight back, it can vary depending on what year they've come into alternative provision. But we'll have all of that data if that's something that you're interested in. And I would, if I can be so bold, would suggest that alternative provision is something that might be really sensible to look at, because it is now part of the special educational needs and disabilities inspection framework. Not that we're expecting an inspection because we were only inspected last year, but actually there are some additional responsibilities for us, and I think some scrutiny of that would be really helpful, and a visit to the alternative provision as part of that would seem really sensible, because there are a lot of myths associated with alternative provision, when actually if we can dispel some of that and just see it as part of meeting a child's needs, I think that would be very helpful.
Any other questions? Mary, do you have a question? Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think we've talked about provision, we've talked about exclusion, we've talked about attendance, and we had a wonderful report. And thank you so much for doing this again for us. I guess we move on to the next topic, which is thank you so much. Thank you for the next topic is the work program. As this is the last meeting for this year, the work program report summarizes the committee's work for the year from May 22 to April 23. The committee is invited to discuss the work program report and to consider what has worked well and what might be replicated in the new work program. The committee is also invited to suggest any topics to be included in the long list for the new work program. So I'm going to open the floor for you guys. Suggestion, discussions. I know we only have.
Well, it's already in the list in the paper.
Okay.
In the paragraph 4.4 sums up the discussion that we've had.
Yeah.
And the proposal is that we would, subject to this process and the formation of the new committee after ADM, that we, from this year, would propose to a working group on integrated service provision for children aged 0 to 11. Because there's been a lot of progress in the borough. There's some very good case studies that we could look at, and it would be an ideal opportunity to look at best practice and to get feedback from those making those provisions as to what the results are and whether they think that the initiatives that have taken have borne out the theoretical advantages that were considered to be the case before they started doing that. And that goes for not only the services that the borough provides, but also public health, NHS, voluntary services, and so on. So, and I think that we could, together with that, have a look at, because we are now, by next year, we'll be 2 years out of the main lockdowns of COVID. COVID has not gone away by any means, that we go out to the lockdown, hopefully, and that we should be able to see some recovery from the, as you mentioned before, there were some aspects of attendance and achievement in schools and so on as a result of COVID, and that the catch-up approach, how the integrated services and how such threats as mobile phones for children in primary schools, whereas it used to be purely for secondary schools, and there's problems in primary schools as well. All of those and how they're addressing. So I think it's timing is right because we'll have issues to address, examples to look at, and metrics to measure.
Okay, thank you. What do we think worked very well in this year? Which do we think something worked very well?
I think the visits we did.
That was very
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 good, very
constructive.
Yeah, thank
Very
our officers
constructive.
and also the staff of the places we went to visit too, because
Yeah. So what didn't work? What didn't work well? So maybe that's some
Well, I couldn't attend any of the visits because they were all during work hours.
Okay.
So I don't know if there are any opportunities to have to look after work hours or weekends.
But the problem is we're visiting schools,
anything
we're
is
visiting
open.
schools
Yeah.
and nurseries and places where they are, The library maybe we can organize a visit for you, in
So yeah, so I understand that there are obviously limitations.
We can do Chelsea Library together.
there's also a program that the officers and so on have developed with partners often to do with holiday services.
Okay.
And quite a lot of that happens at weekends as well during term
Yeah,
time.
we can look into
So
that,
we
yeah.
could look at the ones that are not in a working
So we
day.
keep that in mind, yeah.
Colleagues who've got time on the weekend.
Mo?
I think visits are always good to see things face to face. But the downside of it is the organization might prepare themselves very well to show you their best
The
examples,
best side.
to prevent you to see the downside. So what's not working there? This is my sense.
So you think we should be like, what is it, and have a
I
surprise
think if we
visit?
do the surprise visit, in my view, is much better.
Yeah, okay,
Organizes, they will prepare very well,
Okay.
which is their right.
yeah,
But if for us to discover what's going on,
yes.
we should prepare, be ready for surprise visits.
Okay.
And something to
Think
consider,
about.
this is my first meeting here, hopefully not the last. And I've made one visit, but that was my sense. They prepared people, they wanted us to see specific individuals who benefited and they were very happy.
Yeah.
And there might be people who were not very happy. And we should be allowed to see both and to
Yeah.
assess what's going on.
Yes.
But something, coming to Will's point, COVID is still around the corner
Yes,
and its effect is damaged our pupils, students
yeah,
very badly. And I have proposed a motion 3 months ago, still there. I don't think we are going to see it next week. It's going to be the next meeting or the one after, I don't know. So I think to overcome this, we need to be brave enough to prepare to try new things. I think one-to-one tuition is very, very important because not everyone benefits from a group learning. We have a small number of children, maybe in tens or hundreds. We might be prepared to explore the idea of giving them one-to-one free tuitions.
who's gonna pay for it?
We have to pay, the council should pay.
The council should pay
Yeah,
for
we have
one-to-one
money.
tuition
We
fee.
have money, the department, we have money. I suggested 200,000-300,000 a year to, as a pilot, to with 100 or 150 children, to give them 1 hour a week to start with, to see the
You
improvement.
brought that as a motion, didn't you? at one
Yeah, it's a
point?
motion still there, but I think we should prepare to do that. It's for all our children, they are our future. We should give them the chance,
Sounds like a song.
yeah.
Okay, that's, you know,
Fortunately,
Good
we have
idea.
officers here to.
Well, I could answer that to you now if you wanted to. I mean, obviously, education is statutory funded. I mean, that comes from the government, something like that. It doesn't come from the council. We certainly don't have money in our schools budget unless the government gave us a lot more. But there was government-sponsored one-to-one mentoring after COVID, specifically for children that had been fallen behind, that people could sign up to one-to-one mentoring.
so if you.
And we will
if
obviously
you're
be
looking at a
responding to
certain
that motion, which I don't think we'll probably get to in the next the
Oh,
next
yes, you don't have
council meeting.
Yes.
So obviously we will come back to that with all our answers to the questions in the motion at the council meeting.
Oh.
And it would be true to say that there are, as we've already said in the meeting earlier on, there are circumstances where one-to-one attention of children is provided during the exclusions process. There are also some one-to-one interventions with regard to special educational needs. But the fact of the matter is that in both those cases, that there will be funding attached to the statutory duty to provide that. Extending it on a wider basis is in idealistic terms is a great idea. But in practical terms, one would have to find out what the cost benefit, because we do have resources in the council. The question is, where are they best utilised, and that's a choice. So I think that you have a view, and officers will be able to look at the facts of the situation, elements of it, and then other councillors and so on will have a view as well. So I respect the question you've asked, and I respect it in an ideal world, but at the same time, I think in practical terms, that it's going to be in competition with other use of resources, and that's a choice issue. So that's a good bank to bring, but we don't necessarily guarantee to agree with your specific proposals.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just going to comment and say that I think in a lot of our conversations, it's important to keep in mind that parents, so when we talk about family, often we sort of talk about families as if the parents are absent, and parents are the most important. They have the greatest responsibility for their children. They're the most important people in a child's life. So I think that needs to feature more heavily in many of the reports. So what's the role of the parents? I mean, it was my parents who first took me to a library. It wasn't the council.
Exactly.
So yes, I know that's a sort of trivial example, but I think that's why it's good that we have for example, children's services, families. So I think the example of the family hubs that we discussed earlier is a good example of how parents are taking the initiative to understand what services are on offer and how are we promoting those services to parents first and foremost.
Absolutely. May I elaborate that point further? One of the things that point which is very prevalent at the Grenfell nurseries that we visited was that how many children under 5, almost the age of 4, still wearing nappies, and literally most parents saying they didn't have the time. They came back with literally some things. Oh, we've got new carpets. I can't afford them, so you deal with it. And that's exactly the point I made. But why are we not, saying something to parents? We are here to help you. It's got to be a collaboration.
Yes.
But the message that just came out, it was just a simple thing. Potty training. It was just as simple as that. But the way the parents looked at it was actually, the nurseries and schools will deal with it.
See, that's the thing.
And then some children, very few, a handful, went on, even after they'd been potty trained, a few ended up going to primary school, back in nappies, and then they were being temporarily, at primary school, they said, we can't do this. So then the child ends up spending time at home because there's nowhere to go. I think they have to be re-potty trained, and then the parents have to do it. So I think there's a real breakdown there, and I think we have to promote the idea that we are here to help. It's not entirely the council, the school's responsibility, and I would really stress that. I was very surprised.
We should. I think parents shouldn't abdicate their responsibility.
Yes, exactly.
And put it on the council and expect.
But at the same time, I think the other side of that Sonia, you brought up the point to help parents to
Understand the services
that are available and things, how to suit it. I'm not going to give an opinion about other parents, it's not my role, but as a parent myself, you suddenly wake up one morning and there's this child, and you realise that unlike driving a car or anything else, you've had absolutely no training.
And it doesn't come with a manual, and there is no manual.
But I think that there is a role that the knowledge that our officers have and the voluntary sector people have can give kind and respectful help to parents to enable them
Yeah.
Just to move forward.
I went to antenatal classes. I mean, I've forgotten everything. Did you go to antenatal classes?
No, anyway.
New age
Okay. Okay, so,
Sorry, Councillor,
So,
can I just
just-
come back on the visits and the surprise visits? It's not in the spirit of scrutiny to do surprise visits.
okay.
So I appreciate what you're saying, that maybe people prepare. Well, they will do because they want to show themselves the best, and that's a good thing. So it is your role as scrutiny councillors to listen to residents, and sometimes people will be dissatisfied and you want to hear that, find out is there an issue. But I don't think really surprise visits is the way to do it. You get lots of information, you get complaints reports. As the council, I know we've got co-optees on the committee, but as councillors you have your caseload, people who come to you and you hear that way. Committees had focus groups of residents before this committee, and you can hear from them there. I just really
And also, I think on the prepared visits, you have to remember, we're going in there when people are actually working.
Yeah.
So we're taking away from the working time, so that's why they prepared it so that we are within the working program as opposed to coming as an add-on and they have to look after it specifically. So, but I see you. I totally see you. Okay, one last item we have left is any additional business. Does anyone wish to raise an urgent matter? God, no, please, thank you. Thank you. That concludes our meeting of the Family Service.
Just in time